What's up, guys? My name is Zach, and today I am driving a 2004 Oldsmobile Alero Final 500. Up front is a 3.4 liter V6, and down below is a 4-speed automatic transmission. Now, I am super excited to be driving this here Alero because it is part of the Final 500, meaning it was one of the last Oldsmobiles ever produced. They did a little special edition to celebrate their heritage and the cancellation of the brand, so they decided to go out with a bang, and that bang was this. But before we get on to anything else, I have a website, zackpradel.com, where you can buy stickers and other merchandise when it becomes available. You could also submit your own vehicle to be reviewed by me through a quick and easy submission form, and you get a video of your car just like this one. And you could read my behind-the-scenes blog to see what I'm filming before it comes out on the channel. But let's talk about what was so special about the Final 500. Well, as I mentioned earlier, Oldsmobile wanted to celebrate their history before going out of business in 2004. So they gave each of their models a Final 500 edition. The Final 500's got, first of all, this awesome dark cherry metallic paint color. I absolutely love that. But it also came with embroidered seats, special floor mats, badging in a lot of different places, center caps, sill plates, and for at least the Aleros, not all of them got this, but there's actually a coin inside the door sill distinguishing what production number this vehicle is. So this is actually number 302 of 500. And actually, if you really want to get into it, the Oldsmobile Silhouette Final 500 is actually a little bit more rare. I know you might be thinking, but they made 500 of them. Well, they actually only made 360 of the Final 500 Silhouettes because they ran into some production issues and things like that, so they just called it at 360. But for all the other models, the Intrigue, the Aurora, Bravada, and the Alero, they made 500 of the final vehicles. So I'm excited to share this one with you today. Let's get back to that 3.4 liter V6 under the hood, making about 170-ish horsepower. And it was the higher trim option for the Alero. You could also get it with an Ecotec 4-cylinder, but the Final 500s were basically the GLS trim with added bonuses. So you get that 3.4 liter up front, and it's really an evolution of the 3100, and I've always liked those engines, even back when they were the 2800s back in the 80s. I've always found them to be quite charming V6s, and it definitely makes enough power. I don't feel sluggish. It makes a lot more torque than the standard Alero, and that's very nice. Like I said, paired to a 4-speed automatic transmission. This was really the only option you had in the Alero unless you went with a manual transmission, which was a 5-speed manual, but this is just the standard 4-speed auto. Last but not least, of course, the Alero is front-wheel drive. So with that out of the way, let's talk about the interior. Well, in front of me, I have 4 very plain gauges. On the left is my coolant temperature and tachometer, and on the right is my speedometer and fuel. On the steering wheel, I do have cruise control options, as well as a big pillowy airbag. This really does feel very 90s. Of course, this is a 2004 model, but designed in the 90s, so it still carries those traits. Off to the left, I have a climate control vent, my fog light switches, and my dimmer switch, and on the door, I have my power lock and unlock, power mirrors, and power windows, of which the driver's window is auto, which is very, very nice. Moving into the center, I do get a hazard switch and 2 climate control vents, and the radio itself, this is a very basic, very typical GM radio from this era. I've come to know and love it. It's like an old friend at this point. Then I do have the climate controls. Again, very basic, nothing too crazy. I don't get dual zone or auto, but I do have fan speed off to the left, temperature in the center, and where to send it off to the right, as well as buttons for AC, recirculating, all the goods. Then I do have a 12-volt outlet and a little cubby with a cup holder in front of it. So we will do a big friggin' bottle test here in the Final 500 Alero, and unfortunately, Oldsmobile's celebration of life does not include a lot of water because it does not pass. Then I do have the shifter, standard GM shifter. Again, I've seen this in so many different vehicles, especially other N bodies that I've reviewed, and it does have a little traction control button down at the bottom. Then I have another cup holder. This also fails the big freaking bottle test. I've been getting a lot of comments recently that you guys really like the fail sound. It's soothing to the ears. So I guess I'll play it again. There you go. Hope you're happy. Then I do have a center console and the seats. Like I said, the seats are embroidered with the old school Oldsmobile badge, which I really, really love. I love that look. I love the nostalgia of it. I love the throwbackness of it. However, unfortunately, this car kind of has a little bit of a tragic history. It was actually stolen from one of the previous owners, and in the process of being stolen, they slashed the seats for some reason. And we'll talk about other things they did with the exterior. However, although the seats have been slashed, they actually are really comfortable. GM really knew what they were doing in the 90s when it came to comfortable seats, and that's very clear here in the Alero. However, speaking of seats, we do have back seats, so let's go do a backseat review. All right, so we're in the back of the 2004 Oldsmobile Alero Final 500, and unfortunately, you don't really get any other special amenities or badges back here. Knee room great, headroom great. I've done a backseat of an Alero before. I actually did a modified Alero, which will be at the end of this video, as well as a 2000 Oldsmobile Intrigue video, in case you're wondering. But space back here is great, headroom good, all of the goodiness. Now, something I do want to point out that's not particular to the back seats, but something you'll see a little bit later on, is that the owner actually has the original window sticker for this car, which is absolutely amazing, and he keeps it back here. This is actually the Oldsmobile Final 500 badge. I believe he said from an Intrigue, which is pretty interesting. So you'll be seeing some shots of that throughout the video, but I just thought that that's like the coolest thing in the world to have the original window sticker, especially for an interesting car like this. Let's hop out. We'll take a quick look at the trunk and cargo space, and then we'll talk about the looks. All right, so we're on the back of the Alero. Now, I do want to point out, this car originally only came with one key. However, the ignition was actually swapped out. Again, part of that whole stolen thing I'll get into in a second. But normally these do come with one key, and I want to point that out because GMs of the past, almost every Oldsmobile I've driven has had two keys, a separate key for the ignition and the trunk. This car originally came with one, but because it was stolen and the ignition had to be swapped out and all those things, now it has two when it's supposed to have one. So just so you know. Anyway, come back here, just twist it open like that. And as you can see, nothing too crazy in the back. We do have the Oldsmobile Final 500 floor mats, which is pretty cool, but tons and tons of space. One thing I do want to point out before we get to the actual looks themselves, though, while we're back here, is someone pointed out in my last Alero review that it has to be one of the smallest taillight to car size ratios. I never realized how giant these taillights are until I was looking at the footage again. These taillights are massive. Now we gotta talk about the looks, and I love this dark cherry metallic. I think it's one of the best colors that GM has done in the last 3 decades. It was special. It was only put on the Final 500 Oldsmobiles. So if you see a dark cherry Oldsmobile, whether it be the Alero Silhouette, Intrigue, Aurora, or the Bravada, it's gonna be the Final 500 edition, which I think is pretty cool. But like I said with the seats, this car was stolen and it was actually spray painted. Now the owner and previous owner have tried their absolute best to get this dark cherry back to its original glory, and I think they've done a very, very good job given the circumstances. But again, this car has just kind of been abused and it's unfortunate. But Dylan is here to right the wrongs that the world has done onto this special automobile. But with that being said, let's get on to my final thoughts. What do I think driving a Final 500 Oldsmobile Alero? Well, first of all, I'm a sucker for anything rare or interesting. Now, with that rarity, does that come with a huge price premium for these Aleros? No. Fortunately or unfortunately, they don't. They don't really carry any special price tag unless you have a showroom quality vehicle with almost no miles, but that would be said for any trim of a vehicle this old with such low miles. But what's so interesting to me is that this is one of the final vehicles that Oldsmobile ever produced. I know that should be self-explanatory given the Final 500 trim level. However, they didn't produce all of the Final 500s at the same time. The Intrigue Final 500 ended in June of 2002. The Aurora ended in May of 2003. The Bravada, January of 2004. The Silhouette, March of 2004. And then this, the Alero, at the end of April of 2004. Now, build dates can be kind of fuzzy. The owner apparently found a database saying that this car was built on April 28th, 2004, meaning one day before the Alero ended production completely. However, it seems unreasonable that they produced 200 in a day, but it could have been done. So take that as you will, but this being number 302 means that there was 198 Oldsmobiles after this, then that's it. And with it went a company that had been in business since the late 1800s, founded by Eli Ransom Olds. Oldsmobile in its day had a bunch of insane and amazing innovations. They pioneered speedometers. You know, the thing we all rely on to see how fast we're going. They first put it in a 1902 Oldsmobile runabout. For a time, they were the peak of innovation. But unfortunately, due to mismanagement, due to poor product sales, lack of later innovation, GM decided to pull the plug in 2000, saying that they would slowly phase their vehicles out by 2004. And I have to say that at least this car did get a little bit of a swan song, a little bit of a parting piece. I've reviewed plenty of vehicles that have just died in the dark. There wasn't a party. You didn't get a special coin. But something I've learned growing up, and unfortunately dealing with loss of friends and family, is that sometimes saying goodbye doesn't help. It doesn't make the situation better. I know sometimes we all wish that if we would have known, maybe the outcome would have been different. Maybe things would have changed if you just could have said one more thing to that friend or foe. But in my personal experience, it doesn't really help. It still stings that they're gone. And I'm not sure I'm enough of a wordsmith to have changed anything. And driving this car, is this a museum showpiece? No. But you have to remember that it's 18 years old at the time of filming. And owning a car like this, something special, low production from almost 2 decades ago, is an uphill battle. Owners of these vehicles are now tasked with fighting tooth and nail to keep these things on the road. Parts are becoming harder and harder to find. And who do you call when the manufacturer themselves have left the business? This car is an orphan, hopefully being coddled by generous and passionate owners like Dylan and like so many others. And I'm glad that people like Dylan exist to take care of these cars, to bring them back to their former glory, even when the world has chewed them up and spit them out and spray painted them black and chopped their seats. Even after all of that, there's still people that care about them. There's still people that care about the Oldsmobile brand so many years later. And so I want to end this video on a positive note, on a happier note, because I know that that wasn't the happiest of monologues. This is a celebration. This car was celebrating the legacy, the history, and the brilliance that Oldsmobile used to bring to the table. It was a party looking backwards and not forwards, but sometimes that's when you learn the most. Goodbye, Oldsmobile. I hope you get the rest that you deserve. Huge thank you to Dylan for letting me take out his Final 500 Alero. This has been a vehicle I've wanted to check off my list for a very, very long time, a Final 500 of anything. If you own a Final 500 of the other models, please let me know if you would like it reviewed. I would love to see the Final 500 of the other Oldsmobile products. Maybe one day I'll have filmed the entire lineup. But anyway, huge thank you to Dylan for letting me take this one out. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Don't forget to rate the video, comment on the video, and subscribe if you really liked it. Take care, guys.